Honourable Senators, I move that this bill be read for the second time.
Moved by the Honourable Senator Youssef, seconded by the Honourable Senator Dasco, that this bill be read a second time. Did you have anything on debate, Senator Youssef? Now or third reading?
I wish to speak now.
You want to speak now, Senator Youssef?
Yes.
Okay. On debate, Senator Youssef.
Honourable colleagues, it is my honour for me, of course, to rise before you today to make my maiden speech in this place on Bill 3, an act to amend the Canada Criminal Code and the Canada Labour Code. I don't think there could be a better piece of legislation to mark the occasion for me than Bill 3. Many people have asked me why I chose to become a senator, what will guide me in my role. I simply said, if it's good for the country, it's good for me. The bill before us today, I believe, is good for the country, and I would like to explain why it deserves our support. The bill is about learning lessons from this pandemic to make things better and provide stronger protection for sick workers and Canadians providing access to our healthcare system in the future. The pandemic has taught us that anything less is unacceptable for our economic and social and mental well-being. It recognized the fundamental right of workers to be able to freely, from threats of job security to financial security, to take time off from work to look after their health and well-being. It also recognized the fundamental right of workers in the healthcare sector to be able to go to work unimpeded and without threat of intimidation, while at the same time ensuring that their constitutional right to strike, to peacefully assembly, and freedom of expression are protected. The pandemic has exposed many gaps and shortcomings in our society. It has shown that the best and the worst of us and the programs and protection that Canada rely on for their economic and social and physical well-being. I want to talk about why those exposed gaps on Bill 3 will fill are needed and why we need this bill. For workers, the pandemic laid bare how little employment protection they've had for sickness. It not only hurt them, but their employers and the healthcare system, as workers are forced to decide between their financial well-being and their physical well-being. To put this in context, let's try to understand a worker who works in the federal jurisdiction, who's working for a minimum wage, having to take time off to deal with their sickness and losing a day's pay, or 2 days' pay, or 3 days' pay, simply because their employer does not provide paid sick leave. For that worker, the challenge will be, can they make rent? Can they buy grocery? And can they take care of their family? Colleagues, we all know this is unacceptable in our country. I think Bill C-3 is an attempt to remedy that. I know we have much work to do at the provincial and territorial level, but fundamentally, this goes to the heart, to the people who have risen to the occasion when this pandemic hit our country. They did not run and hide. They went to work to ensure the services that we want was provided, despite the fact they know they could get sick, despite the fact they know they could lose time from work and not get paid, but yet they perform their service. This bill, of course, rises to the occasion to address their concern. But equally and symbolically, by the federal government tabling this legislation, it also sends a signal to our provincial and territorial government that we must do better to protect workers in this country, and I hope it will guide us as we move forward. Our federation is unique. We have many different jurisdictions that are responsible for the labour code, and we must respect that. But equally, the federal government can provide leadership, and I believe Bill C-3 does exactly that. Currently, the federal jurisdiction provides 3 days of paid leave that can be used for personal illnesses and injury. Only 2 provinces have permanent paid sick leave. Prince Edward Island provides for 1 day of paid sick leave after 5 years of continuous employment with their employer. 1 day after 5 years of service. Quebec provides for 2 days of paid leave after a year. 2 days. Most recently, British Columbia, January 1st of this year, provide employees with 5 days of paid sick leave. As you can see with these statistics, we've got a long way to go in this country, and this is just part of that journey. In 2019, Canadian workers took an average of 8.5 days of leave of illness for illness and disability. Clearly, the existing leave entitlement in the Canada Labour Code is not enough as it's currently designed. The broader issue in regards to passage of Bill C-3 will set a process that our federal government will now have to engage with the provinces and the territory, how, of course, that we can do better. And I think that is the rightful place for our federal government to be, to show leadership, but at the same time to work with the provinces and the territory to ensure we can do better. Honourable Senators, you know and I know we're not yet out of this pandemic. We may have many distance yet to travel. As we're about to adjourn, a new virus is upon us. We don't know what the consequence to the economy and to working people will be, but we know one thing. The efforts in this bill will certainly give workers the certainty, should they get sick or have to take time off in the federal jurisdiction, they will benefit from this legislation. And they're looking forward to the passage of this bill. It's always been a challenge for working people, of course, to advance the interests and their collective interests. I don't need to tell you the millions of workers in this country who are working in precarious conditions every single day. They don't complain about it. They're hoping that their elected representative and their representatives in the Senate would do better to understand their challenges and the difficulties they face. I think this bill, of course, goes to the heart of that. I want to thank honourable senators for their effort in improving the bill. There's been a lot of collaboration in this chamber to say, as we look at the bill as it was tabled, we could do better. And those efforts was recognized in the other place. There have been some changes and some improvement to the bill. I want to thank the colleagues who've collaborated, who've provided guidance and assistance and leadership, and have helped me, of course, with the work I was doing. Once again, it shows that the Senate is playing an important role in improving government legislation, which is part of our responsibility in this chamber. The bill will provide federal jurisdiction workers something that no other workers in this country currently have, with 10 paid sick days. Many of these workers, you see them in your journeys in life. When you go through airport, whether it's today or tomorrow or over the holidays, take the time to recognize a lot of the workers who work in the airport work for minimum wage and don't have paid sick leave. This legislation will touch their lives. Think of all the trucks and highways and roads that you see constantly that's in the federal jurisdiction that's bringing goods and services to us during this important, difficult time. Many of those truck drivers work long hours, but yet they don't have the protection of paid sick days. This legislation will change that reality. And more importantly, it would also send a message to workers in this country who have sacrificed so much in this very difficult moment in this pandemic, that we have got their backs. Paid sick leave will support employees experiencing temporary illness in 3 ways. It will protect their income, so they don't have to worry whether or not they could meet their grocery bill or their rent bill at the end of the month. It will protect their job by preserving their relationship with their employer while on sick leave. And third, it will protect their health by allowing them to recover more quickly at home rather than continue to go to work while they're sick. It also promotes a healthier workplace by encouraging sick workers not to go to work and reducing the risk and the spread of communicable disease. Earning paid sick leave, employees will earn 1 day of medical leave with pay after 30 days of continuous employment with the same employer to a maximum of 10 days in a year. Accumulating sick leave will begin on the first day of employment. After 30 days, first 30 days, an employee will receive access to 3 paid days to better protect an employees at the beginning of their employment. Unused sick days in every calendar year will be carried forward and then deducted from the 10 days entitlement the following year. For example, an employee who has 6 unpaid sick days will be able to earn a maximum of 4 days in the next calendar year. The government have amended bill to provide 3 days after the first 30 days upon concerning the views, of course, of opposition in the other House. And of course, many of those have testified in the Senate Social Committee. And of course, senators have been arguing that we should do better in regard to this section of the bill. The goal of expanding paid sick leave across the province and the territory. The change to the Canada Labour Code will send a powerful signal to workers across this country that we need to build a stronger safety net for them. And hopefully, of course, our provincial counterpart across this country will sit down with our federal government and figure out how we can do better. Although this only applies to approximately 1 million workers in the federal jurisdiction, the government has committed to take leadership role in working with the provinces and territory to make sick leave a reality for all workers across this country. Bill 3 also deals with the issues of healthcare workers' protection. Healthcare workers have long faced difficult working conditions, including violence and threat of violence in the workplace. This situation is exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic. The Government of Canada have taken action, introducing amendments to the Criminal Code to enhance the existing protection for health workers and ensuring that everyone can access healthcare services safely across this great country of ours. These amendments will create a specific intimidation offense and a specific obstructing access offense to protect healthcare workers and persons seeking healthcare in this country. For many healthcare workers, this amendment to the Criminal Code responds to a long-standing concern about their ability to work in an environment free from violence and threats. Preliminary results emerging from the 2021 National Physical and Health Survey provided to me by the Canadian Medical Association suggested over 75% of physicians have experienced intimidation, bullying, harassment in the workplace. And the issue is even more pronounced for women, 80%. More than 33% of those reporting experience it at least a few times a month. Honourable Senators, we are fortunate in the environment in which we work in. We don't have to face harassment and violence to come to work. We don't have to perform our services with a threat over our head. And we don't go in and day out to our job knowing fully well that we'll be experiencing the same harassment that we experienced the day before. Because this chamber recognized that is unacceptable. But why is it that healthcare workers in this country can't have the same benefit we experience every single day in doing our job? I think this legislation gets to the heart to send a clear message. In 2019 report conducted by the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health entitled Violence Face Healthcare Workers in Canada documented that healthcare workers have 4 times higher rate of workplace violence than any other professional, despite most of this violence is unreported. 4 times. Now, most Canadians would not know the statistics, because when we show up at a hospital, we get the care we desire. Those people don't run away from their responsibility despite the adversarial condition they work in. They remain there to perform their services, to ensure Canadians can access the health care they need in this country. And they do it because they recognize they can make a difference in the lives of those who come to get the services that they deserve. Everyone deserves to be safe when working and providing medical care. Goes without saying. Healthcare workers and those who assist them must be able to perform their duties without harm or intimidation. And Canadians seeking healthcare or visiting a sick family member must be able to access the service safely. The Government of Canada is sending a strong signal that intimidating healthcare workers and those seeking access to healthcare service is not acceptable. Not in the obstruction and access of healthcare facilities. The amendment will create a new sentencing provision in the Criminal Code that will require courts to consider more serious penalty for offenders who target healthcare workers engaging their duties or who's impeded others from obtaining health services. Individual who intends to make healthcare workers or a person trying to access healthcare fearful to stop them from accessing or providing healthcare could be charged with a new intimidation offense and be subject to a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years when prosecuted by indictment. This does not make protesting outside of hospital or employees on strike at healthcare facilities illegal. The federal government is committed to upholding and defending the Canadian Charters of Rights and Freedom, including the freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. These changes to the law will respect workers' freedom to take labor action and organize, and Canadian freedom to voice their concern and protest in a safe and peaceful manner. This is fundamental to our Constitution, and all of us will agree this cannot be trampled upon. It is fundamental to what this country is about. My friends, I know this legislation may not meet the expectation of all in this chamber, but I can tell you it goes a long way. There was one amendment made to the legislation over in the other place. Colleagues, the loss of family members is one of the great grief and sorrow. The loss of a child is devastating. It is sometimes has profound consequence on the mental and well-being and has a dire effect on your work. Based on a report for the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development, in 2016, there were 2,720 deaths of children under the age of 18 and 3,063 stillbirths. There is an amendment in C-3 to provide 8 weeks of leave for parents who are confronted with this unspeakable tragedy. This is a compassionate amendment that will support parents when they need it the most. None of us will disagree that this is not the right thing to do. In conclusion, this legislation is about building a better Canada from the lessons we have learned from the pandemic. And I know there's more to do. But more importantly, colleagues, what Bill 3, of course, outlined in the 2 sections are going to move this country in a significant way. There's far too many workers who work in precarious conditions in this country. They need to know we are listening to them, we are hearing their voice for change so they can work in better conditions. It is critical for us to understand how profound this legislation is to working people. I had the privilege of representing over 3 million of them for 22 years. I never thought I would be in this chamber, of course, to continue with my fellow colleagues in this effort. Bill 3 will provide statutory protection for nearly 1 million workers to have paid sick days, first of any jurisdiction in this country. It actually gets us to the OECD standard around the world. It's unfortunate it took a pandemic to get our attention, but as they say, it is never too late. It will protect the physical and mental health of healthcare workers also, those who working hard to save lives of Canadians stricken by COVID. and those who are administering vaccines that are protecting millions of Canadians from getting the disease. I want to recognize, of course, my Senate colleagues and the witnesses come to testify before the Senate committee in making the argument they made why we should pass this bill. The Canadian Medical Association can't thank us enough for passing this legislation. SEIU, the leading healthcare union in this country, pleaded with me for us to get this done. They've had members who have died in this pandemic providing healthcare services because they didn't have access to PPE. They didn't have sick leave. And when the pandemic hit, they couldn't stay home to do their jobs. They had to show up. QP, who represent healthcare workers in many parts of this country, have custodian workers who are faced with violence, but yet they go to work every single day to meet their responsibility. Unifor healthcare workers, the Canadian Federation of Nurses, NUPCI, and the Canadian Labour Congress, all of these organizations have urged us, my friends, that we should pass this legislation because it will send a clear message to these workers who are, again, will have to don their helmets and their protective suits to ensure, as this new variant hit our country's shores, they will be there to do what is necessary as they've done before. I want to thank you, honourable senators, for listening to my remarks, but more importantly, thank you for the service and thank you for your friendship.